Hello, this is Alum. I'm back with another video updating Mirandus for Milestone 6. And we'll start off with the introduction, which has the introduction slide. Number 2 is a roadmap that was shamelessly stolen from the Mirandus dev team's most recent town hall. And after that we have the equipping of the Lantern of the Sun, which is the NFT lantern, and all the bugs related to that. Followed by that we have the Bronze Lantern, which is the non-NFT lantern that was released with this particular build. The materials with that, a slide in the video, crafting it, showing how that's done, and the refueling and maintenance of that. Number 5 is we have the slide and video on creating a human female character, which is the first since the Chilean dev team came over for female characters. Then they added new implementation for repairing, and that's directly into the forge instead of just using the repair powder. There are some undocumented changes as well, and we'll go over one really major one that's significant for combat. And as per the norm, I will finish with my final thoughts. So this slide here is the roadmap to which I was referring, and you can see at the top the M6, M7, M8. Those are all of the milestones, and they're currently planning to do a milestone every month, and they've been doing a town hall approximately 2 weeks before each milestone. So we're at the May 2025 one, and all of the things that they mentioned are indeed in this build. The next one we see there's going to be some treasure chests, which is kind of cool, adding more female, redesign of the menu, which definitely needs to be done because there's a lot of issues with that. In-game chat will be somewhat interesting. I kind of like the way it is personally at the present, but given that there's things such as Discord and stuff which allows you to bypass a lot of normal limitations, it's not a terrible thing. The July update's looking pretty promising. They're finally going to have pets in the game. Specifically, I'm looking at the dragons, which have been one of the very first NFT items for Mirandus after the buildings and deeds, so having them input into the game will be interesting to see. And they're going to repair the Vox charms, which, as you can see from my video a little later on, the Voxes are quite an issue to say the least at this point. NPC AI improvements, definitely there's some issues with pathing, so that's a welcome improvement. And then lots of new stuff coming for the rest of 2025. A new zone, whether that's one that was previously planned like King's March or something completely new, and then lots of new enemies and weapons and such. So lots to look forward to coming this year. And in the town hall they also mentioned that potentially have Materium earnings and implemented by the end of the year, if not probably by next year. And then next year we'll likely be seeing things like deeds and buildings and the like. Lots to look forward to. First off, how to equip the Lantern of the Sun. Most people are probably like, why would we need multiple slides and a whole video just how to equip a NFT that I already have on my character? And that would be a good question. One that shouldn't even have to be answered in the first place. So typically, and this is the way it is for most people that log into the game, say your only item is a Lantern of the Sun, which will be in your inventory on a fresh character. You simply right click the item and then you click equip. And it's done. Your Lantern of the Sun gets equipped to the slot where you see on the right picture there I have circled in a big yellow circle. That's the new belt lantern slot. However, that's not the case for everybody. And myself, I'm probably one of the worst people for this just because of the number of NFTs and the variety, and plus I have all my inventory slots were filled as well. So if you have multiple Lanterns of the Sun, or potentially if you had one equipped before Milestone 6 was implemented. So say in Milestone 5 you had a lantern equipped into one of your weapon slots, and on top of that, let's say you have a ton of Vox, enough to fill up all your remaining empty inventory slots. If you have that criteria of things, it causes a ton of issues, which we'll see in the upcoming slide and specifically see in the video. what's this all about? Well, there's bugs, and there's a lot of bugs. So first off, Vox spawns can fill your inventory. And Vox are NFT items that in Mirandus are used as neck charms. And originally, Vox would fill up your entire inventory, or as many Vox as you didn't actively have equipped, by logging into the game, dying, or changing zones. Now, when you die, you technically change zones because you go to Purgatory, and when you leave Purgatory, you change zones as well. So all of these first three things are somewhat related to the changing of zones. Like if you go from no zone to a zone, the act of logging in is essentially changing a zone. So that's essentially one issue. Unfortunately, this build has brought up a ton of new issues, and these ones are considerably worse because it's hard to avoid. So first off, opening your inventory can cause your inventory to get filled with Vox. Deleting a non-NFT item. So deleting an NFT item doesn't usually cause it, but deleting some other random item, say something that was dropped off of a mob, can again cause your inventory to get filled with Vox. The act of equipping and or unequipping items will also potentially cause your inventory to get filled with Vox. So that's one side of things. The other side of the thing, again, related to Lantern of the Sun. Now, you're probably like, this is a slide on Lantern of the Sun. Why am I talking about Vox? Well, in order to actually equip the Lantern of the Sun, you first need to actually deal with the Vox issue. Otherwise, you can't even see your lanterns in your inventory. And once you do see your lanterns in the inventory, you can have multiple different lanterns in your inventory, even if you only own one lantern. Here's the possibilities for lanterns. So first off, you find a lantern, you equip it, and it equips the belt slot. That's great. That's the lantern that you can actually use, and you can turn it on and turn it off. The new default key for that is Z. The next one is a lantern that's permanently stuck in your inventory. You can't move it, you can't equip it, you can't do anything with it, you can't even delete it. It's just stuck there. And yeah, that's clearly bad. So that's the kind of the worst case scenario. The last one was, I think it's a bugged version of the old lantern that used to go in your weapon slot. So now that one will go back to your weapon slot, and you can, in quotes, equip it. Like you can actually pull out that item on your paper doll to show that you actually have the item, and your weapon hotkey slots will work for it, but it doesn't actually provide any light. You can't attack with it or anything else. So it's essentially, it fills up a weapon slot and does absolutely nothing. So not to the end of the world, but at the same time completely useless. So here in this video, we'll go over a few things. So you can see I unequipped the item. It turned the inventory black. So that's a bugged inventory when it turns black. So I exit the inventory and come back. Now my inventory is filled with Vox, which are those charms. And you have to delete all the Vox before you can actually do anything. Now, in the key bindings, you can actually set it so that your key binding is set to automatically destroy it, and I do this later because this is a very long process each time. The next thing is I go to try to equip a different item. Equip an item, as you see, it just filled my inventory with Vox once again. So I kind of skip ahead here because I didn't feel people wanted to watch me deleting Vox the entire time. Now I'm going to delete a non-NFT item. So I deleted that sinew, which resulted in my inventory filling up with Vox again. This is a little bit later, after I finally got to the point where I deleted enough stuff to get my lanterns to appear, and I tried to delete a lantern, it wouldn't work. I tried to equip a lantern, it didn't work. I tried to equip that lantern, and it does go to the actual spot. So that's the good lantern. However, when you have a good lantern and a bad lantern, it bugs your inventory, and you have to exit and go back in. Now that's the other type, the third type of bad lantern, the one that goes into your weapon slot, and that bugs your inventory as well. And each time you do this, of course, your inventory fills up with stuff. So what you have to do is you have to delete the bad one, and then you have to equip the good one. And then as you see here, you then have to disconnect, log in, and log out. So you have to do that order of things. Deleting your Vox, equipping the good one, deleting the bad one, and then finally finding your character amongst 800 exemplars. And then you log back in and it should be functional. Also, as you know, I just had 1100 Materium that appeared there. So in the process of doing this, I also duplicated Materium because I had 0 Materium before. So that duplicated off of a different character. So now it does appear that I was able to equip my lantern. And now that I've properly equipped and unbugged myself, this time when I log into my character should be able to function properly. So logging back into the game. Okay, so the Materium is fixed. My inventory, because you logged in, is filled. So that is working. And I can both toggle it on and off. See, it's off. And now it's on, which is good, so it's working. My weapons are all working properly as well. And the bad lantern is now gone. And to make it so that my inventory is completely functional, I now have to delete all the Vox once again for the final time before I can actually start playing. And it took me almost an hour of doing this to actually get my lantern working the first time. So for those wondering why they should potentially watch a video on how to right click an item and equip it to your inventory, this is the reason why. And there we go. Everything's good. Weapons are equipped. Now when you equip and unequip weapons, it shouldn't fill your Vox with inventory because the bad lantern that bugs everything is now gone. See? All working. Now that that lovely process is over, we can start talking about the new items. So first off, we have the Bronze Lantern, the material gathering. So there's a couple of new materials you can gather out in the wilderness. The first is flaxseed, which it says a seed gathered from harvested flax, commonly used for crafting oil, specifically for lanterns in this case. The other one is lesser animal fat, a thick greasy substance rendered from animal tissue. It can be used to craft oil, again specifically for lantern oil. Now, the flax seed has about a 50% drop rate from flax plants. So flax plants will drop flax plus the flax seed. The other one, the lesser animal fat, I've only actually seen it drop from rabbits, but I've heard that it can drop from other animals. Regardless though, the rabbits do have a fairly high drop rate on it. It's not as quick to gather as it is from the flax plants and to get the equivalent amount of oil, but if you want to get the animal fat, I would highly recommend focusing on the rabbits. Now, to make the lantern itself, you also need a bunch of other base materials. So there's total 10 flax, 6 tin ore, and 6 copper ore. And there's a series of refinements you have to make within that to make the actual lantern, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. So for this video, we're going to start off here just showing gathering the new items. So we're gathering some flax here, which is something we've done before in trying to make the gambeson armor. So we got 2 flax, you can see there on the right. This one here is going to give us 2 more flax. So we're trying to get some flax seeds here. We actually need flax anyway because we need that as part of making the wicks. So we got 1 flax seed there. And another flax seed there. It does work out to be about 50% like I was saying. Now, the next is trying to look for the animal fat. So the easiest, like I said, in terms of looting is, see, we got some animal fat right there from that rabbit, but it's not 100% drop rate as we can see here. So in this rabbit, yeah, no animal fat. So once we have the base materials, and that includes the copper and the tin ore, which you can see where to get that from some of my earlier videos, we can make the bronze lantern, which is the new item. To make the bronze lantern, you need to have 3 bronze bars and 1 flax wick. Now the 3 bronze bars are made from 6 copper ore, which you then convert into make 3 copper bars, and then you can get 6 tin ore, and you turn those into 3 tin bars, and then you combine both bars together, the copper and the tin to make a bronze bar. So 3 copper bars and 3 tin bars makes 3 bronze bars. And then the flax, which you need 10 flax for, you need 5 linen threads. Now the 5 linen threads are used per wick. Now, in the process of getting the flax, you get the flax seeds, which you can then turn into the oil as well. So it does work together where if you're efficient, you don't need to go out of your way and farm too much. So the copper bars, the tin bars, the bronze bars, and the bronze lantern you can make at any size forge. So that includes the simple forge in the outpost and the large forge in the village of the Earl. And the linen threads and flax you can make at any size outfitter. So that's the cloth stands at the outpost and the outfitter at the village of the Earl. So here we start off, we're in the outpost and we're going to the cloth stand to make some linen thread. We need 5 linen threads. And then we make the 5 linen threads into 1 flax wick. Once we leave the cloth stand or outfitter, you can go to either forge. In this case, I actually go to the meat stand to make some lesser oil because I just happen to have some lesser animal fat on me. And we'll get into that in more detail in the next section, slide and video. Once you have that, you can head over to the simple forge or a large forge and you can craft some bars. So I got a bunch of copper ore, which I got from the goblin area to make copper bars, and then the tin ore, which I got from another area around the wolves and the goblins to make tin bars. And now grab in the bronze to make some bronze bars. You need 3 of those. Now you see the bronze lantern just lit up, so we can make that. So 3 bronze bars, 1 flax wick, and we have ourselves a bronze lantern, which is right there at the top. And I have a lantern in the sun, however I can replace that with the bronze lantern, see? Going right there, and as soon as you equip it, because it was already activated, it starts burning. You can see the timer counting down, so I gotta automatically turn off before I waste it. Now we're in the village of the Earl. In the village of the Earl, you can make lesser lantern oils from the grain stand. Now the grain stand is only in the village of the Earl, so be aware of that. And there we go, nice little stack of lesser lantern oil. Now that we saw how to make the lantern oil, we'll go into a little detail on what this involves. So refueling the bronze lantern. So as you saw, we can make it from lesser animal fat, which is done at the meat stand or butchery, and the flaxseed is done at the grain stand or mills if a place has a mill. The flax plants are by far the fastest way to do this. If you have a bunch of flax together, you can gather a nice stack of oil materials in a matter of like a minute or two. Trying to hunt animals to do this is much slower. Now in terms of the oil itself, every time you use a lantern oil, it restores 40% of the lantern's total supply. And the lantern itself uses 1% of its oil per second. That means it has 100 seconds before it's depleted, which is equivalent to 1 minute and 40 seconds. Now with this patch, they've also made nighttime a little bit darker. I personally didn't find it all that much darker, and nighttime does have a couple different levels of darkness depending if it's the early nighttime, deep nighttime, or late nighttime. The other thing is nighttime does last a full 5 minutes. So if you have 3 separate full bronze lanterns, you can last the entire nighttime. The other possibility is having 1 full bronze lantern and 5 recharges of oil, which will make you last the full 300 seconds. Now the important thing when it comes to the lantern is that if you have the lantern of the sun, you can just leave it on all the time if you like, because it doesn't use any materials. However, this burns a ton of oil very quickly, so you're definitely going to want to turn this on and off as you need to. So try not to leave it on during the daytime, and at nighttime really you're only wanting to use it when it's either really dark night or when you're not within a lit area such as a settlement. Another thing as well, which is kind of odd, is that when you do run out of oil, it says that the item is broken, but obviously it's not broken, and you can't repair it even if you wanted to. So despite you making it at the forge, you can't repair it at the forge. And to, in quotes, unbreak it, you simply put more oil in it, and then it becomes unbroken. So here we go, we equipped the lantern. I sped up the video. On the bottom left you can see the lantern burning down, and it expired, and it says the item just broke, the light went out. And now I want to fix that, so what I do is I go over to my lesser lantern oil and use it, and you can see that little on the far left there, it added 40%, which is great. So I'll use a little bit more. Boom, it's up to 80% now, and we're going to top it off so that it's fully recharged at 100%. And by then activating it, and it seems to be working, so we just turn it off because we don't need it at the present. On to the next one, the human female model. So on the right is a human, and all the different human exemplars at the present look the same in terms of their female models at least. This is the base unarmored female model. Interesting of note, this is the first of the female models that the Chilean dev team has released. Prior to this, there was one female model that was ever in Mirandus, and that was the female elf, but it was only available for 2 different tests. Tech test number 2 and tech test number 3, which were back around the summer of 2021. And interestingly enough, at that point you could only have a female elf. There were no male elves at the time. Now, as per the roadmap, which we looked on the second slide of this video, the remaining races, Orc, Dwarf, Halfling, and Elf, will all be getting their models later on, with the next being the female elf, and that'll all be done before the end of the year, which is good to hear. Also, for those who are wondering, the female models use all the same items, armor, and weapons as the male models as well, so you don't need to craft different items, and eventually when these items are potentially NFTs, they should be tradable between the different sexes without having any issue in that regard. Now, I was also wondering in terms of their colliders, whether their heights, their range, and distance was all the same, and that was a little more difficult to assess that because very recently the dev team removed the CSV values in Excel from the game file, so now to access or do any data mining you have to dig much deeper into the game files. Okay, let's make ourselves a female character. So first we have to find a human female. Oh, there's a human female. Click on that, switch over to female and start. And that'll load us in as a female character, starting outside the Citadel of the Sun. And this is a goldsmith. Now this is a bugged lantern. You see I have 2 different lanterns. I have that bugged one, which you can now see on my hip, and you can see the other one there that I can equip in a weapon slot. Now, equipping and unequipping that one sometimes can bug it. And now you can see I have 2 different lanterns equipped in 2 slightly different places on my hip. So that's yet another bug when you have 2 bugged lanterns. And to the next thing, forge repair. So on the left hand side here we can see the crafting station forge user interface. So on the right hand side next to craft, if you click on repair, it's a different tab. It'll show all of your items that are not 100% durability. And on the right it'll show how much durability they have and how much you want to repair in addition to the cost of repairing. Now, if a item has more than 50% durability loss, so say it's at like 49% durability, then it'll give you the option to repair it by 50%, which would bring it to 99%, or repair it by 100%, which can't go past 100%. You can't over repair an item. And the cost is 15 test materium and 1 lesser bone marrow to repair 50%, which is identical to the cost of the repair powder. And if you go to the 100%, it's double that, so 30 test materium, which will eventually be real materium, and then 2 lesser bone marrows. Now, one thing that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me is why the repair powders and the forge repairs are the same cost in terms of materials. Typically, you would expect the repair powder to be more expensive, given that you can use it while you're out in the field. it has additional utility compared to the crafting station. Like the crafting station repair should be kind of a bonus for those that are planning enough in advance to actually do this prior to heading out, but you don't really get any additional bonus for doing so. So personally, I think that the Testamenterium cost should be less for the crafting station version 1, simply because of less utility over the repair powder. Otherwise, just always make repair powder and completely ignore the crafting stations. And at the crafting station, you can also repair your item with the current cost of 1 Gala token, and that applies to each item the same way that you can repair your items with Gala token out in the field. So here we're going to go to the Simple Forge, and we click on the tab on the right, which opens up our damaged items, or worn items in this case. And you can see that item won't let me click over because it was more than 50% total durability, but this one is under 50% total durability, so it'll allow me to repair by 100%. And I repair that just to show how it works. And everything else is looking good there, so I go in, I confirm that that pair of boots is at 100%. Now, the next thing is very interesting, and this is a really huge change that I both really like and don't like at the same time. The way it was previously, if you're active in combat, say you were actively swinging your sword or poking with your spear, then you could use a bandage which would heal over time, or you could use any of your energy restoration items, like the jerky or the flatbread. And you could do that while in active combat. Even if you had a two-handed weapon like a spear, you could still somehow bandage yourself while poking with the spear, which didn't really make any sense. Now, however, you can't actually do that. So while you're actively attacking, you can't use either, and you actually have to not be attacking for a period of time. It's like a period of seconds, at which point you can use a bandage or use one of your consumable items. And that does make sense logically, right? And it's similar to other MMORPGs, like I'm giving an example of, say, World of Warcraft. So when you're in quotes in combat, and in combat is a certain character state. It doesn't matter if you're actively attacking, as long as you've been in combat or you're aggroed onto a mob in some way, you're considered to be in combat. While you're in combat, you can start bandaging as long as you're not actively attacking. However, if you do any other action, you jump or you take damage or do anything like that, you'll interrupt the healing process. Also, they only allow you to eat in World of Warcraft when you're completely out of combat, so you're not actually actively on a mob's aggro table, which is, I think, is a little excessive, because let's say I was running away from a mob, there's nothing really stopping me from chewing on some jerky while I'm actively running away from a mob. It's probably not what I would be thinking of, but there's nothing really stopping me from doing so. The way that it's currently in Mirandus, whether it was intentional or not, I think is a very good implementation. And some final thoughts. So this was a fairly short video, and I went into fairly significant depth into some of the topics here and the many bugs in this particular one. Honestly, I think this video was more about bugs than it was about actual content. The image there is the splash screen when you're loading into Mirandus for Milestone 6, and you can see a female exemplar running there with a sword, and you see a bunch of goblins behind them, and they have the lantern on the left hip, which is consistent with what we're seeing in game. Some interesting things. So over the Easter break, we had a slightly more rabbits long weekend event where the most useless mob in the game had their spawn rate slightly increased. It didn't provide any additional value whatsoever. It was essentially completely without purpose, and there was no rewards for defeating them. I do like the idea of having in-game events, and I think that's a great idea. I just don't really see why there would be in-game events with really no purpose. In the future, it'd be nice if we continue to have events to get people interested in the game and get people playing, but at the same time having some kind of direction or some reason to actually play it. In terms of the roadmap, I think it looks really good. I always, of course, want things to be done faster and better and more detailed, but the dev team has been pretty consistent over these last few months, and I do like the forward looking, I do like the plan. I think their plan is realistic. I actually expect them to meet the goals of the plan. Of course, there'll be some bugs and stuff along the way to work out, but it's definitely going in the right direction. At the present, there's not a whole lot of reason to really be playing other than to just simply test out things every once in a while, and it'd be nice to see that change. In terms of the Gala ecosystem as a whole, I've seen a lot of negative sentiment after the Walking Dead empires got scrapped, and a lot of people seem to be concerned that some other games will likely go that route, and I suspect they probably will. Honestly, with the exception of Townstar, Vox, and Mirandus, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if literally all the other games get scrapped. I think those last three that I mentioned would probably be the last ones, if at all, to get scrapped. And that's really all I have to say about this build. It was a smaller update, mostly because of the shorter time frames between builds, and I'll keep everyone updated as new content is released. Have a good day.